Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be diving into multi-tenancy for Laravel. So I looked at this package a while ago and just didn't have time to actually dive in. So what we're going to do is look at it together. I don't know if you've used it before or if you haven't, but let's just do it, right? So I've got a very empty standard Laravel application installed locally. Database hasn't done anything yet. It's literally just plain Laravel with a couple of dev tools like Laravel Pint and PHP Stan installed and configured. That's it. As you can see, all of the routes are currently pretty standard too. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change my appearance on here quickly. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Make that a bit easier for you guys watching to read. That looks reasonable to me. I'll tell you what, we'll even focus on the code. Let's go do that. Let's focus on the code. Right. Let's just dive in. So multi-tenancy it sounds a lot more complicated than what it is. And I think the reason behind that is mainly because people think you've got to do some crazy networking, and you actually don't. So if we come back to this package here, let me come here. Right, okay, so there's a tutorial that you can follow. Nice and simple. And you can just get that working. So we're just going to follow it along. So let's go ahead and get this package ready to rock and roll. So let's just compose a require. The next step is going to be to install. However, before I install, I wanted to look at one thing. I just realized that I'm in light mode. So there's dark mode, because I always get complaints about that stuff. So let's get the help for that. Is there any additional parameters? No additional parameters needed for that. My office door just opened. Give me a second. I'm going to close that. Otherwise, you're going to hear a million children in the background because I'm repopulating Wales. Right. Okay. So there's no extra things that I actually need to do on that. So let's just install that. And what you'll see is it's created the config, it's created the routes, it's created the tenancy service provider, it's created any migrations required, and it's created the tenant folder within the database migrations. So if we come back to Arc, our next step is to actually migrate the data. So what I'm also, before I do that, I'm going to come over to here and make sure that I register the service provider. So if I just open up Bootstrap app. No, not that one. This one. So we need to manually register this. I'm not sure why it doesn't automatically register, but it doesn't. And that's okay, because I can add that. There is all of this. All of that is good so far. So let's just go through these migrations. So let's come to here. Let me just check my EMV quickly. PG SQL. So this database SQLite isn't actually needed. Oh, well, I'll just ignore it. I'll ignore it. I can do that, right? So we've got our users, cache, jobs, tenants, and domains table. All of these are all set up, ready to go. And I'm not going to make any changes. So if I just run Artisan migrate, that's going to migrate everything that I need. Fantastic. Now we can create a tenant model. And it wants to be kind of similar to this. So let's come ahead and go to our models. We've got our user already. So we're just going to go and create a new PHP class called tenant. And we're just going to drop all that in there. Actually, let's just do it like that. There we go. Let's have a look, see what we've got going on. So we've got has database and has domains. So this implements a tenant with database, which means that each tenant is going to have its own database. Kind of does what it says on the tin there, right? It has domains, so each tenant has a domain that is registered to it, etc., etc. We'll dive into that a little bit more later. Next up, what we want to do is register it within our configuration. So if we come over to config and down to tenancy, the tenant model there is the core one. But what we want to do is actually say we want to use our own tenant class at this point. That is all good. Let's come back to Arc and events. The default will work out of the box here, but a short explanation will be useful. So the tenancy provider maps events to listeners. So when a tenant's created, it runs a job pipeline to create a database and migrate database and seed to database. And they're all ran kind of sequentially at this point. So then we need to make a small change to our existing routes file. So inside whichever one we're going to do. So at this point, we are kind of going back to our application. We're going to go back and focus on our app at this point. So let's just collapse all of this and let's just focus for a second. We've got a tenant routes all within here. Let's just clear that up. So we've got web, initialize tenant by domain, and prevent access from central domains. And this is going to do some tenant stuff. And then we've got web, which is very basic. And then we've got console, which is also pretty basic. So what I want to do is if I come to the tenancy provider here, if we just scroll down, let's just add an array as a return on that one. What we're going to do is just fix that whole file quickly. By default, no namespace is used to support any callable array syntax. Okay, that's cool. That's all good. That's all good. Job pipeline. Register, nothing in register, so we can actually remove that. Then map routes. Let's come down to map routes. Let's just do that. And then we can just say our path is that. So by default, is going to this tenant part here. And what I want to do is I'm building an API. Surprise. Nothing new there, right? So we're going to be building some basically just an API for multi-tenancy usage. Or shall we go Livewire? Let me know. Should we do a web app with Livewire or something? Okay, so tenants routes. So that's the first step for me. Also, that namespace I'm not going to use. I'll keep it in there, but it's not being used. Return type has no specified value. Okay, so we'll just return an array with int the mixed. No, that actually returns class string and mixed so far. That's all good. Okay, so let's go set up our routes. So new directory, tenants. Within here, we're going to have our routes.php, which is basically just going to copy this, which means I can delete that tenant.php. Not yet. Where are you? map roots. Okay, I need to put it in 2 places. So if file exists. So I could probably remove that because I know the file is there. So let's just simplify that a little bit. And that means that I can come here and go bish, bash, bosh, off you go. And then down to our app here, we're going to have the default web routes and the default console routes. A little bit more organization, just so that it's not just loads of stuff floating in a directory, but things are organized. So I can create a routes.php there. And we're just going to copy that into there. This console, what we're going to do is just drop that in there and remove. And for this, we're just going to drop that in there and delete that. So there we go. So now I've come back to Arc. Let's just go have a quick look. Tenant cannot be identified on eng.test. Not a problem. So close all of that down. We'll come back to routing shortly. But what we need to do in our tenants here, we want to fix these central domains. So I'm using Laravel Herd, and my domain is eng.test. So now if I come back to here, 404 not found. That shouldn't be an issue. A optimize here. Awesome. Right, so come back to, no, that's the CRM that I'm building. There we go. We're getting there. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. So what do you think about Sparsy's Laravel multi-tenancy, and what about Alpine and Livewire? So I haven't used the Sparsy package. If I'm honest, this package is pretty much the gold standard when it comes to multi-tenancy. If you want to build a multi-tenant application, this is what you want to use. So what we want to do now is come back to our routes. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create, we're going to build a web app. We'll add an API a little bit later, but for now, we're just going to do this and drop that into there. And let's see, remove braces. No, don't want to remove braces. It's going to ignore that for now and fix the whole file. All looking good. That can be static. Come back to Arc and let's go look at this, and there we go. We are back in business. So central domains, you need to configure those. Tenant routes needs to look like that by default. Migrations, blah, blah, blah. To have users in tenant databases, let's move the users table migration to the database migrations tenant. So let's come to our database down here, migrations. We want to basically move that to there. That's simple, right? Creating tenants. So I'm not going to use Tinker. I'm going to create like a seeder, basically. So let's go into our seeders, database seeder. And instead of creating a user, what I want to do is create a tenant and domain. So first up, create a tenant, then attach a domain. So if I just copy this as an example, we want to do something like this. So our tenant is going to be tenant. I haven't got a factory, so we're just going to query create attributes with the ID. We're going to give this an ID of treble. And then what we want to do is get our tenant, get the domains, and create attributes where the domain is going to be treble.eng.test. And then just delete all of that. So now if we migrate fresh and seed. However, this isn't going to work the way we expect yet, because at the minute, our queue is running within the database. I want to set this to sync while I'm working locally for now. So if I run all of this, it's going to create all of those things, do all the magic, and hopefully everything should work. So let's come to table plus a second. And let's just move that up here. So we've got a tenant and we have got domains. So if we come over to here, we've got tenant treble with users and everything within there. So if I just close that connection for now, come back to here, and the way I want this to work is if I come to the config tenancy, we will come down. Let's go through bootstrappers, database, prefix. I don't want a prefix. I want that. I want a suffix. So like treble underscore tenant. So it's always kind of prefixed instead. So if I come back to table plus, I want to drop that. Let's just delete that. All good. Right. Now if we migrate fresh and seed, come back to table plus, click on this, we should have treble underscore tenant. And that works. So we've got our main one and we've got our other one. So if we come over to here, if we refresh, undefined table sessions, not a big deal right now. So what I want to do is say treble.eng.test. So we have got our tenant. This is your multi-tenant application. The ID of the current tenant is treble. Fantastic. So next you want to create a user inside each tenant's database. So over in our database seeder, let's come down to here. And what we're going to want to do is we've got a tenant there. So let's just type hint that as tenant for now. Next up, it wants me to run each tenant run for each. I'm not sure if that actually works. So tenant query get each. Don't need that. What I want to do is basically say user factory create, and I'm going to create me, obviously. You can say name and email, just student B, gmail.com. Right, now let's run that again. And now we're seeing problems. Tenant could not be created. Database already exists. Okay, so let's just drop that. And let's rerun it. Ooh, now we're on to the next problem. Undefined relation users does not exist. Ooh, what's going on there? Database seeder. One for each. And come back to table plus, make sure we delete that database. Grab that. Realistically, you would probably do some sort of, there we go, do some sort of command to delete tenant databases. And there might already be one. No, I don't want about this Mac, my bad. Arc, there we go. So trying it out. So now you can come over to here. We can access it and it's all good. So if we came over to our tenant root here, we could die and dump on user query get. And let's just go have a look. So there we go. We've got one user within this tenant, which is me. So we have created our first user. Oh, okay, so 2 seconds. So apparently my video quality isn't great. That is mainly because I've got really bad internet. So it won't work as you need to initialize a tenant. So insert record and that's blah, 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 blah. Not a problem. Blah, blah, blah. Cool. Right. We are back to it. So let's just ignore that for now and let's just remove that. So at this point, we've got our tenants all good to go. We can start doing things. So what we want to do is have a look at things like digging deeper, Livewire. So we're going to install Livewire and see what happens. So composer, require Livewire. So while that's installing, what we want to do in the Livewire is update it so that it uses this. So is that published by default or is that something I need to publish? So a vendor publish Livewire config. Come over to our Livewire, class namespace, view path, layout, uploads, navigate, pagination themes. So I'm not actually seeing middleware in here. I'm only seeing it in one place. So perhaps, I don't know. Do that. We'll add it manually. I don't know if it's different for the latest version of Livewire. So let's have a look at. I need to do this in the tenancy service provider. There we go. So let's come back to PHP Storm and let's just remove that and this. And let's just go add this to our tenancy service provider. So we need to add this to the boot method. So where are you, boot method? Boot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this boot Livewire, like that. So we can have a protected function boot Livewire. Doesn't return anything. What we want to do is that. So let's import Livewire and import that. Initialize tenancy by domain. That can be static. And it's going to return a root. I'm not going to worry about that. Right, come back to Arc. So to make file uploads, you need to set the following. So if we ever want to do file uploads, let's come back to here. We're also going to want to then do that one. So config Livewire, temporary file upload middleware. So let's go set that in our config Livewire, temporary file uploads middleware, like so. Then we can do everything else. Make sure to enable universal routes. Tenancy.features. Let me make sure features universal routes. That's in there. Tenant config, cross-domain redirect, Veep bundler. I'm not going to worry about any of that right now. I just want to kind of follow along and see where we get. How we're doing in the chat. Hello, hello. Right. Middleware, universal. This will use a middleware group as a flag on the route to mark it as a universal route. Sometimes you may want to use the exact same route action both in the central application and the tenant application. You may use the same path with different actions, whereas a section covers using the same route and action. Okay, so this is maybe something that I don't actually want. So let's just comment that out. We're going to ignore that. Pretend I didn't do it, people. Pretend I didn't do it. Okay, so at this point, what we are going to do is come over to here, and we're going to focus on this now. So we're on our multi-tenant application there. And this is our main route here. So let's come to there, and I'm going to set my sessions to be file-based. Just for now, make it a little bit easier. In reality, this would end up being on Redis. That's the way I typically use it. But for now, it is what it is. So let's go ahead and start working on this application. So what I like to do is grab this, drop that in there, delete that file. I'm going to want some Tailwind. So let's get some Tailwind installed. Then we're probably going to want Tailwind CSS forms. That'll probably do. So while that's installing, let's just clear all of that. Close all that up. Package JSON is looking good. So next we can go npx tailwind init. So what this is going to do, we're going to go to resources. Anywhere in here that has a .blade.php. And we want to import forms from Tailwind Forms and add this as a plugin. So now we can npm run dev. I'm going to rename this to Beat. Let's come over here for our application. Next up, we want to come over to, let's go to here and let's Tailwind CSS Laravel. Done all of that bit. Let's just grab that. Come to here and views. Now we're going to want some components and layouts. First one I like to make is page.blades.php. This will accept a title as config app.name and do some magic there. And what I do is grab this because it saves me remembering it. Add that there. I'm going to add a class of hateful background slate 50, and in dark mode we are going to have background slate of 900. Then down here we can add the title. Here we can add the JavaScript as well, JS, and replace that one. Finally, we can say, let's load our Livewire dials there. Add a body class of hfull font sans anti-aliased and text slate 900, and in dark mode text slate 50. All of that can then be replaced with a slot. And finally, the Livewire scripts. That's all of that done. Next up, we're going to want pages. So we're going to say pages inside here. This is similar to like the way Folio works, I think, but I don't install Folio. I just organize in a similar way. So this is going to say x layouts.page. Title is homepage and test. So in my routes for the web, these are our main application routes. We can switch this over to a view and replace that callable with pages.index. Give it a name of home. As pages home, all good. Come back to arc, pages.index not found. Let's move that out of layer. There we go, my bad. Don't know what's going on there. Let's go have a look. It looks like I might have done something wrong. Let's just go make sure I set all of this up properly. Is that correct? That is correct. Could it be this? CSS, that's all correct. All of that's correct. Maybe it's a tenant thing. Ooh, could it be the tenants? Vite. Do I need to do something with Vite? Vite bundler. So config, tenancy, Vite bundler. Okay. Let's just inspect the page and see what's going on. So that looks like it is picking it up, but for some reason it is ignoring it. What is that text about? Let's go have a look. Network, make sure we're looking at all, and refresh. App CSS, that should be fine. Livewire is loading, everything's loading. That should all be working, but for some reason it is ignoring the styling. Let's try it in another window. eng.test. Okay, so something funky is going on. Let's come back to our layouts here. Oh, you are absolutely correct. All of that is in the wrong place. There we go. I put it all in the wrong place. This is why I do APIs, people. This is why I do APIs. So we have got all of this working. All of that is good. So in reality, what you'd want to do is have this onboarding process where people come to this home page and they come to sign up and they've got to create their tenant and user at the same time. This is why you can't use one of the defaults. So if we come over, and what we're going to want to do is make a middleware called auth middleware. And this is going to it's likely going to be in here. So root prefix auth as auth group static function, doesn't return anything, like that. Can also make that static. And then down here, we're going to have a root view for the login, which is going to be under pages auth login as login. Whew, what a mouthful that was. So views, pages, auth. Then we're going to have some form of login.blade.php there. For now, we're going to say app layouts.page. Title is sign into your account. Test. Right. Now let's go to this middleware quickly and have a look what needs doing. So for now, we're just going to remove all of that. This is going to extend the auth middleware, the authenticate middleware, and we're going to override the redirect to. And this needs to return the root for pages auth login. This returns a string, so that in our app here, this middleware part here, we can say middleware aliases. Our auth middleware is actually the one that we've created. And then simplify that like so. close all those tabs, come back to our roots. And what we want to do is we'll keep that at the top. So root, middleware, auth, group, static function, void, drop that in there, come back to arc, and this should have redirected us to the login page, and it has. Yeah, data is data, JSON's JSON, simple life, right? This whole HTML and Java, yeah, just I'll leave that to people who know what they're doing with it. It's just so much easier. All right, okay, so what I'm also going to do is make a register .blade.php, and for now it's going to be the same. Now, this login is actually more likely at this point, if you're not authenticated, you probably need to go to register, not login. So down here, we also let's login. This isn't actually going to be here, is it? So let's make this a register like that. So that's what we really need, because then in the tenant over here, we've got middleware for initializing all the tenant stuff, and then let's just drop that in there. Then we're going to have the login. Like so. If we come back to, oops, what did I even press? App Store. Nope. Let's come back to Arc. That's not found. So let's say register. That works. However, if we go to login on this, it does work. So I can log into my tenant, or I can log into, or I can register to create a tenant and go through that process. So we are going in the right direction. Let's create a Livewire component. So a Livewire make auth. Let's make the login form first. And we'll focus on the login form. And then we'll worry about kind of registering sign up workflow from there. So login form there. Let's come back to Arc, and we're just going to go to Tailwind UI quickly. Tailwind UI, because why design things when other people have done it for you? Right, sign in and registration. I'm going to go, and we're just going to grab this one. Not view, HTML, inspect that, and just going to copy this element, come back to PHP Storm, components. We're going to create a guest layout. So guest.blade.php. And again, this will accept a title, not a turtle, a title. And this, again, this will default to the config app.name. Then we can say x layouts.page title, drop that in there. So this is going to be all of that stuff. This is then going to be the title. Then all of this within here is what we want to replace with a plot. So if we come back to this login page down here, let's swap this to the guest. come over to here. Don't know what's going on here. So let's just do that. Come back to Arc, sign into your account. There we go. So this is going to be having something like that. And then this form itself is going to be the Livewire form. So I can then say Livewire auth.login form like that. Not a member. We're going to ignore that because it's going to be done slightly differently. Perfect. So in this login form here, I can just replace the whole thing. And we are good. We've got an email address and password for the tenant. Login. Sign into your tenant ID account. So now if I come back to Arc, sign into your Treble account. Perfect. So we're able to understand where we are. Okay, so login form there. Right, come back up to here. Let's go to our Livewire login form. This is going to return a view. It'll get the factory injected into it. And then we will say factory make this view, please. And if you've watched any of my streams before, this is because the view helper will just do the exact same thing. So why use a helper when you don't need one? So now let's say public function submit void. So this is where we're going to validate the form, authenticate the user, redirect the user. Like that. So this is the process it goes through. So if I look down here, let's just have a look at this. And what we want to do is have a root middleware auth. All tenant roots from this point want to be authenticated. Like that. So in theory, I should be able to add middleware of guest on that one. Just make this a static function, which again returns void. Come back to Arc. Looking good. We're getting there. Progress is progress is progress. So next up, what we want to do is this part here. Let's just change that action to be wire submit. And we're going to just wire model password. Forgot password, going to ignore for now. And then this bit, we are going to say wire model email. That'll submit, that will do that stuff. All is good. And then up here, let's get logged in. So come back to Arc. And universal does not exist. Where is that? Okay, so that's complaining about some universal stuff. Let's uncomment that. Come back to Arc. Let's see what's going on. I think that might be a Livewire thing. universal does not exist. Okay, so that means we need to look at universal roots and add this into our Bootstrap app here. And with middleware, we want to group do that, middleware universal. Now let's go have a look what's going on now. So just steve@gmail.com and password. Now we're there. Ah, we got there. So we can now worry about logging in. So at this point, we want to pull in that auth manager as auth. Firstly, let's validate the form. So validate this is required. Could be an email. And we're going to say that this should be a max length of 255. And this, we can do pretty much the same thing. So we can just say this validate. Come back to Arc. Let's make sure we're not getting any problems. All good. So at this point, we want to authenticate the user. If we cannot attempt this using that, then we want to throw a validation exception with messages where the email is going to be failed to authenticate you. Let's leave it at that for now. And then finally, we'll just do this redirect. The URL is going to be, let's go look at the tenant stuff. And let's make sure that's got a name. Name, tenant, home. Let's do a quick root list. Make sure I haven't got any other prefixes. Yeah. Root get that. Oh, sorry, name. / there. We're going to have tenant home there. So what we actually want to do is stick to the way we were doing it. So we're still going to have that as pages, tenants, home. Then this will be pages, tenants, auth, login. Redirect.
Coffee Fairy.
Ooh, Coffee Fairy has arrived. Thank you, wife.
Looks like you haven't noticed Logan's watching.
Logan's watching. My son has tuned in.
He's written in the chat.
He's written, has he? Oh, this is my son. Hey, Logan, thanks for watching. Quick question here. Is this multi-database or single database? So this is, we're going for multi-database here. Simplified that one, and we're going to go to pages, tenants, home, like that. Let's delete that and make sure that is correct. So we've validated the form. We've attempted to log in. If we can't log in, we're going to throw that exception, which we can then capture on this front end over here later. And then if all is good, we just redirect to the tenant's home page. So let's test. This is your multi-tenant application. Fantastic. So at this point, we have logged in. All is good. Let's delete that file because we don't actually need it. So do that refactor there. So we've got our pages, our Livewire stuff, and our components. And we know we can log in. So let's come here a second. Right, let's just tidy this up. And I'm going to put all of this on one line, make it a little bit cleaner. So that's all of our guest middleware. This is all of our kind of authenticated stuff there. So this we're going to change into a view. And we are going to say this is pages something. So at the minute, we've got pages index. What we're going to do is we're going to create tenants there. So what we're going to want to do is have a tenants and have an index.blade.php x layouts. For now, we'll use page. The title is going to be tenants homepage test, and we're just going to say tenant ID like that. So this then goes to pages, tenants, index. Come back to Arc. Unable to locate class layouts. Oh, I did a typo. I always do typo. There we go. We have logged in to the tenant's homepage. So what we want to do next is, wow, have a sip of coffee to start with. That feels like that's a bit of a mission. My son has been watching since I started. Well, you can tell he's getting bored of half term because he's watching these live stream. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do, come over to here again, and what I want is some sort of layout. We're going to go for a simple live sidebar layout for now. Sidebar with header. Let's just grab this one. For now, we're just going to say copy that. My wife wants to join in the live stream again.
Sorry. I asked for a free t-shirt.
He wants a cool t-shirt. Right, okay, so we're going to go here and we're going to say that our title is going to be the config app.name. But what we're also going to do is have the tenant passed in as a prop by default. This is going to automatically be the tenant ID like that. So then we can say X layouts page where the title is title like that, and we're just going to drop tenant into there as well. Then we're just going to drop that. Okay, so what we want to do here, do not disturbs done. Okay, so let's swap this out for app, the Arc, and come over to here. Placeholder. Okay, so placeholder can go, and what we'll do is just put the slot, no, wrong language. There we go. So I was writing some Vue yesterday. There you go. Test treble. We are logged in to the tenant homepage for treble. Excellent. So we can clean all this up later. But what we want to do next is look at making resources that are specific to tenants. How are we doing in the chat? Does Logan also use Laravel? He is 9, so not yet. He's just started playing with Python and JavaScript. He started building a game with Python, using a little bit of JavaScript. He's getting there. He is definitely going to be looking for a job. So if anyone's hiring a 9-year-old who can write a little bit of JavaScript and Python, let us know. Right, okay, so let's make... Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm just going to say a tenant. Let's see what we've got. So we can migrate things, list tenants, roll back, run, and seed. So we can do lots of things there. What I want to do is make a model, and within this tenant, we're going to have multiple teams. So let's say migrate fresh, migrate and factory, sorry. So there we go. So what we need here is in our database migrations, this teams table is actually going to be within there. So let's come to the teams and let's work on this. I haven't done any cleanup all over the place yet. So we're just going to say ULID, ID, primary key, cool. So we don't need to target the tenant because it's isolated within its own database. So we're going to have a table, green for the name. Not too worried about the slug. Maybe we'll have something like a description that's nullable, and we'll have a nullable logo as well for now. Maybe we'll have like a foreign ULID for the user ID, for the which is an index. We're going to constrain it to the users table, and we're going to cascade on delete. So we've got teams and we've got a team owner. What we need to do is now go back and work through all of these to make sure we are happy with them now that we know things are working. Let's clean that up and clean that up. Right. So we want this to be a ULID. This email verified app, we will move down to there. We're also going to add some soft deletes onto our user model. On our sessions, we're going to make this a foreign ULID, which is a nullable index, which is constrained to the users table, and it will cascade on delete. So apparently I've not done something. Expect a semicolon. Where is that? Where is it? Expect primary up there. There we go. So let's just close all of those off. Cache tables. Let's make sure these are all good. So honestly, you could probably move a lot of these migrations to tenants itself, especially on a job side as well. But right now, I'm going to come back to that because I'm doing everything kind of on a synchronous basis. So that's all of that. Close all of those. So tenants table. I'm going to refactor this to return a new class like that. Delete that and delete that. So string ID primary, custom columns can go there. So I'm not going to worry too much about the tenant data right now. Let's come back and do this one now. So let's return a new class there. Drop that, and do that. Let's make sure that's all fixed up. That's all good. Come over to here, and we'll run Laravel Pint and declare that static to increments ID. So domains. I believe we can create our own domain model as well, which we probably will do. So let's go ahead and create that domain as well quickly. So new domain. This is going to extends the domain. This implements that, does all of that. So I'm not going to worry about anything on that one there. Instead, I'm going to import this as a tenancy domain like that. I'm not going to add anything extra yet. Model domain, we are actually going to use our own. So import that. Fantastic. So instead of it incrementing, what I want to do is use that ULID. That, so this domain here can say use has ULIDs, and let's see how that goes. So let's come to Table Plus a second, and we're going to connect to the main database. Make sure that's there, and what we'll do is we're just going to drop this again. Drop that. Come back to PHP Storm. Migrate fresh and seed. And there we go. So not null violation. Users, not null constraints, failed, row containing blah, blah, blah. Okay, so all of that stuff there is done. So what we need is this to say has ULIDs, use soft deletes. Table plus, let's just go ahead and delete that again. Drop that. Come back to PHP Storm, and let's migrate fresh and seed again. So there we go. We are good. That bit is all done. Tenant's got what it needs. The only thing that's bugging me right now is we're routing to a tenant based on. Actually, are we? We're not, are we? We're going to the tenant by its domain, so that ID shouldn't matter. So in theory, our tenant here, we could make this ULID so that on the tenant, we can tell it that use has ULIDs. Custom columns here. So let's give a tenant a name. Let's go look at that base tenant. It's unguarded, which is fine for now. It's a minor model that's not going to be used much. So let's come down to our seeders. So instead of saying tenant for that, we're going to give it a name, and we're going to call it Rebel, like that. So come back to Table Plus. And what we're going to want to do is delete this, drop that, and now come back and check if this will still migrate fresh and seed. And we died. Okay. I'm just going to shut my office door again, and we're going to crack on. Okay, so what is causing the problem here? Not null value in column name of relation tenants. So name, treble, connection, insert into tenants, data, ID, name, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so maybe there's something on the docs. Yeah, this is using herd. So let's go have a look at this, and let's look at our tenants here. So creating tenants. So custom columns. Attributes of a tenant model which don't have their own column will be stored in the data JSON column. So that's kind of Ooh. So get custom models. Okay, so let's use this. Let's come to our tenant. Let's go to the base method. Virtual column. Okay, so let's just return name. This is going to return an array int string. Now, if we come back to table plus, let's make sure that tenant's not there. That's all good. Now let's see if we can migrate and do it again. Okay, so null value in column ID of relation tenant. Okay, so something to do with the tenant means that I can't override the ULID. I am assuming we've got something on here. Concerns generates IDs, boot generates IDs. If there's no model key, and the model should generate ID. Okay, so let's close that and that. Come back to our tenant. Should generate ID. Return false. Let's see what happens now. Still failing. Okay, so maybe we aren't able to use ULIDs on tenants, which is a bit of a pain, but I'm going to accept it because, well, because I can. All right, so that's a string. Come over to our domains. We'll make that a string as well. Let's close all of those. For now, we'll just stick with defaults and focus on ULIDs internally within each tenant. So our user has got ULIDs. I'm going to delete these for now because they're not needed. Delete that. That is all good. We're not going to worry about email verification right now. And that has a team. So this can use as ULIDs billable. Let's open up the teams table. So name, description, logo, and user. Name, description, logo, and user. So we can say public function user, which is a belongs to. Return this belongs to. We can still write Laravel exactly as we usually would do. And it makes zero difference. So what I can now do is public function teams, have many, return this as many, related team, foreign key is user ID. Like so. So if we come back down to this database seeder here, we can say that this is a user, and what I want is a team factory for the user, create, and I'm going to create. The name of the team is going to be developer relations. The logo is going to be null, and description is going to be the devrel team is awesome. Come back to table plus and make sure we haven't even created that table yet, which is great. So Migrate fresh seed, and we died again. Not null in vain with our tenants. Okay. Whew. I did it wrong. Here we go. ID. Treble. Tenant. What have I done? What's changed? ID is treble. Domain is treble. All of that is done. Tenant has nothing on it. Let's just do a user dump auto load. Okay, so this is being a butt. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are figuring this out. So, not null violation. Null value in column name of relation tenants violates a null, not null constraint. So, insert into tenants, ID, data, values, treble, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's come to table plus and let's just refresh this. Okay, I'm going to have to do this that way. Discard all that. So, delete that one. Delete that one. Delete that one. Delete that one. Delete that. Delete that. Delete that. And then we can finally delete that. Come back to PHP Storm. We're still getting the same problem. The tenants shouldn't have a name. Wait a minute. Did I not update this? Yeah. Okay, so that's a problem. ID of domain violates. Okay, so let's go look at this. What did I change on this? Increments. There we go. Treble tenant already exists. It's like a circle of death. It is the circle of death when you're trying to make changes on the fly. So let's just do it again. There we go. Now, if we come back to table plus, what we want to do is let's go with treble tenant there. Teams, we have got a team and a user, and everything is wonderful. So now if we come back to here, we want to go to treble.ngtest login. Then let's log into our tenant. And what we will do is make sure that our tenant view, tenants index, that's all of that. Maybe we'll do something like team query count. We got one team within here. So that is multi-tenancy. It is working. Add the down method on the tenants table to leave a tenant DBs. Ooh, I like this idea. That is actually a really cool idea. Migrations, tenants table. Drop if exists. Yeah, I'm not sure how to get the ID at that point. It's definitely a good idea. Definitely on my to-do list. One thing that's going to annoy me is that should be with the data, and timestamps should always be at the bottom. Probably foreign ID, tenant ID, on tenants, on update, on delete, cascade. Okay, so this is going to be a foreign ID for tenant ID on tenants, cascade on update, and cascade on delete, which means I can remove that. All good, all good, all good. Things are starting to get organized. Let's just close that connection and make sure we can then delete it. So drop that table, treble tenant, drop. When the more I think about it, the more I think it should be a prefix, not a suffix. I've changed my mind, people. I feel like it makes more sense to be tenant underscore treble, right? Maybe. Let's try. Let's do that. Data type mismatch. Cannot be implemented. Big int and character varying. Okay, so we can do foreign ID for tenant class. I believe we can do that. UUID and okay, so foreign UUID. Let's try that. No. Okay, I might just have to keep that as it was. There I am trying to make it funky, and the standard just works. Right, I am going to call it a day there, but we are definitely going to pick this back up because I think there's a lot of things. Ooh, can I know how many apps you use for your stream other than here? Not really sure what you mean there, but I'm going to call it a day there. I'm going to go and finish my coffee and go do some actual work. But I will catch you next week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good rest of your day. Stay awesome. Like, comment, subscribe, all the usual YouTube and that stuff filler. Stay awesome. Catch you later.